Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Samantha and today I'm bringing you my May reading wrap-up. Now, I know in January I had these like grand plans to schedule and film and post every Saturday, and then things got busy. I have no other excuse, and things got busy. But I am making up for it this month. I read a total of 14 books. Crazy. I used to read like that all the time, and then I had a baby, and then I just stopped reading as often. I just didn't have time to like sit and absorb a book. But this month I did. So let's get into it. The first book I read this month was Dragon Mark by Sherilyn Kenyon. It is number 26 in the Dark Hunter series, number 1 in the Dragon Rising series, and number 5 in the Lords of Avalon series. So I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It is about a dragon who was forced to become human and fight for humans in their army. I don't really have anything else to say about it. It's hard to explain if you haven't read the other books in the Dark Hunter series. I thought it was really well written, and I hadn't read any of Kenyon in a long time, so I thought I'd be really lost, and I was for a little while, but she wrote it so I could get back into it. However, I do think that if you have never read anything in the series, you'd be quite confused. But I did like this book. The second book I read, I actually listened to on Audible, on audiobook. It was An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. It is a high fantasy novel. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It is about a girl who lives in this world with fairies, and the fairies can't make anything. They can't do anything like called craft. Like they can't cook, they can't paint. They can't do anything where they make something or else they'll like shrivel into dust. And this girl is a painter, and she paints the likenesses of these fairies. And one day Rook comes and asks to be painted, but she does something awful, and she paints human emotion into his eyes. So it kind of undermines all of what he stands for in this fairy society. I enjoyed it. Listening to an audiobook, I'm not sure was the best idea. It was a good audiobook, but I felt that because I had to like start and stop and start and stop, I kept missing things that were important. So I liked the idea of the story, and it was okay. It was just a meh book. Meh book, May. That's funny. Just to me, probably. The third book I read in May was Gemina, which is the second in the Illuminae files. I got this from my library, so I no longer have it because I wanted to let other people enjoy it. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I read Illuminae in April. That's the month that comes before May. I read that in April, and my library actually didn't have this one. It had the first and the third, and I was like, I have to get the second. So when I got it, I read it, and then I donated it to my library because I felt that no person should only have access to the first and the third. Anyway, if you don't know, the Illuminae Files is a science fiction story, and the premise is that there was an illegal mining colony on a planet that was attacked, and now the people who attacked it are on a tribunal. They're going to be like convicted or not convicted if they actually did this thing. And the first book follows a group of characters, mainly 2. The second does the same. And I got sucked up. It's really big. The books are really big, but they're written in like file format. So there's not a whole lot of just like text on a page, text on a page. You flip it and there's like diagrams and notes and text messages. So that really got me pouring through the book. I really got invested in the characters, so I definitely recommend this one. That brings me to the fourth book I read in May, which was Obsidio, which was the third and final in the Illuminae files. I also gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I don't have much to say that I haven't already said about Gemina. I really enjoyed it. I don't think these 2 characters were my favorite out of the 6 or 7 main characters we get to learn about, but it was definitely worth the read, and it was a great capstone to the reading of all 3 of the books. I'm glad that I didn't have to wait, because I read them so late. That rhymed. Sorry. The 6th book I read in May was Wicked Lovely by Melissa Marr. I definitely didn't say that the Illumina files were written by Jay Krefman and Amy Kaufman. Sorry. Anyway, I read Wicked Lovely, which is the first in the Wicked Lovely series by Melissa Marr. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I read it on May 11th, so I wish I knew more about it. Let's look it up real quick. Oh, okay, now I remember what this book is about. So there's this girl, and she can see fairies, but she doesn't want them to know she can see them because it's dangerous. If they know that you can see them, they can come after you. They play pranks on humans all the time, but she is one of the only people who can actually see them happening. She attracts the notice of the Summer King, Keenan, who is kind of in this fight with his mother, and she laid down a curse a long time ago, and he has to find a girl who can hold the winter staff and not freeze because of it. If the girl can't hold on to the staff, she becomes the next girl that has to warn all the other girls against Keenan. I remember why I liked it, even though I read it so long ago. It was a very engrossing tale. I read it very quickly, and I really enjoyed the characters. I really wanted to punch Keenan's mom in the face, so whenever I feel that way about a character, I think I like it. The 6th book I read in May was Grace and the Fever by Zan Romanoff. I think you say that. Again, this one is actually in my library. This one is actually in my classroom library. There are some books that I feel like other students should have the opportunity to read, and I don't want to be selfish because I've got lots of books, so they should have some too. Grace and the Fever is about this girl who is a giant fan of a boy band, and she ends up running into one of the members of the band on her street, and they get their picture taken by a paparazzi, and then it becomes this big thing. The band starts using her with her knowledge to sell the press a story about the band because they're kind of falling apart. I ended up only giving this 3 stars. It was okay. It wasn't anything to write home about. I don't remember what I really didn't like about it. I just remember that as I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is okay. So I think that's why I gave it that rating. The 7th book I read was Thunderhead, which is the second in the Scythe. I think it's going to be a trilogy by Neil Shusterman. There could be more. Don't quote me on that. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Again, I got it from my library, so I don't have it. Thunderhead and the Arc of the Scythe series is a series about a dystopian world in the future where they have conquered all negative aspects of society, including death, which means that to control the population, they need to have a group of people called scythes that kill people. In the first one, there are 2 people who become apprentices to a scythe so they can become the next scythe. And in this one, we get a perspective from the Thunderhead, which is like the omniscient cloud of this society. And the Thunderhead can't interfere with the scythes. It was like a separation of church and state type deal. But some really bad stuff is happening in the scythedom. And the Thunderhead is trying to figure out, for one, how it can figure out exactly what's happening since it can't watch the scythes, and two, how to fix it, again, if it can't interfere. Very good, 4 out of 5. Neil Shusterman has always been one of my favorite authors. He's actually one of my husband's favorite authors too, which is saying something because my husband doesn't read a whole lot. I definitely can't wait for the next one in the series. I feel like the second one was even better than the first one. The first one had a lot of political intrigue, and I'm not super into that. The second one had a fair amount, but I didn't feel as dry as the first one. The 8th book I read in May was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I wasn't planning to read this. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but I don't really like Rainbow Rowell. And when I read this book, I remembered why. I read it because one of my students read it for a book report, and she was like, Mrs. Atwater, you have to read this book. And I was like, okay. So I did. Again, I got it from the library, so I don't have a copy here. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and the reason was the ending. So if you haven't read it, I'm not going to spoil it, but basically there's this girl who writes fan fiction about a Harry Potter-esque book series. And she's going to college with her twin, and they've always done everything together, but now, since they arrived in college, her twin doesn't want to have anything to do with the fandom anymore and wants to, be the stereotypical college girl. And that aspect was great. I believed it. I felt the pain of the sister and the twin. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but the ending, I was just like, why? Why did it have to be this way? Rainbow Rowell, why did you do this to me? So I gave it a meh. It's a 3. It wasn't bad. It was just the ending. I hate books when they do that to me. I remember yelling at my husband, I hate when they do this to me! But she did it anyway. So, yeah. The 9th book I read in May was Warcross by Marie Lu. I gave this a 5 out of 5. I loved this book. I felt it was so well written, so believable, and the twist at the end had me rolling. I was shocked. Just let's leave it there. If you don't know what Warcross is about, it's one of those gamer type books, but the main character is a female, so she's a gamer girl, and she is also like a hacker, kind of, and she hacked into a giant Warcross tournament, which is like this big game, and everyone ended up seeing her, which wasn't supposed to happen. So the creator of the game flies her to Japan to investigate someone else who has been hacking into the game. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend this. I cannot wait for the second one to come out. I hope it's just as good. This was my first Marie Lu book. I will be reading more of her for sure. The 10th book I read in May was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I am late to this train. I picked this up at Target when it was on sale, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. If you've been living under a rock like I have been, this book is a high fantasy about a girl named Feyre who is living on the other side of a wall that separates like the fairy lands from like the human lands. One day she makes a mistake and she ends up being kidnapped and taken to the fairy lands. There is a romance, there is self-sacrifice, there are very well written characters. I really did enjoy this, and let's just move on to my 11th and 12th books of the month, which were 11th, 12th, and 13th. I read the next 3 in the series, which are A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, A Court of Frost and Starlight. I gave A Court of Mist and Fury 4 stars, as well as A Court of Wings and Ruin. I gave A Court of Frost and Starlight 3 stars, and I will talk about why. I have never read an author that in one book can make me love a character and in the next book make me hate them from the bottom of my heart. Sarah J. Maas did that very, very well. I'm not going to spoil anything for you because I don't want you to be like, you told me the plot of the second book. You really do have to read the first and then the second. You kind of have to read them. They're in a series for a reason. There was nothing I didn't like about the next two in the series. I read them both. I read one from my library and one on my e-reader, so I don't have physical copies of those books. I liked the way that Sarah J. Maas created the universe. I really enjoyed getting to know the secondary characters. But when it came to A Court of Frost and Starlight, it was just meh. I've heard this from a lot of other people. I don't feel like it was a necessary addition to the book. I don't feel like it was a necessary addition to the series. It was a great slice of life book. I loved getting to see the characters in this solstice environment, kind of like Christmas when they have to like give gifts to each other, because what do you give someone after knowing them for 500 years? I don't even know what to get my husband for Father's Day. Any suggestions, let me know in the comments, please. It was good. It was meh. I didn't think it was a waste of time to read it, but I wish that it had just been the next book in the series, you know, the next full-length, let's learn about these characters. There was one thing that I think is very important for the next book in the series, but I feel like she could have written that at the beginning of the next book, in all honesty. The last book I read in May, so number 14, was Shelter in Place by Nora Roberts. I have a full review for this on Goodreads. I'll link that down below in the description box. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Nora Roberts was my introduction to romance novels when I was 13 years old. Huge fan, always have been, got to go to a book signing from her when I was 14 and like died. However, lately her books have been very stagnant for me. I actually like didn't read any of her for a very long time. And after reading this book, I remember why. This book is about a mass shooting in a mall. And we meet a lot of different characters the first 200 pages of the book. The book is only 400 pages long, and our two love interests don't meet up until like page 212, which kind of irked me because they fell in love after that very fast. Like I was supposed to believe that it was love at first sight, which unless it's written very well, I have a very hard time believing that. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was just okay. I didn't like this new writing style that she is using, where she gives us slices of life from different people, but then switches up the chronology of the story on us. So where I'm learning about this girl's wedding, it flashes back like 4 days to when this other person was doing this. It's not that I found it hard to follow, I just found it annoying. And when I got to page 200 and I knew who the love interests were going to be and they still hadn't met, I got irritated, honestly. I have 4 other Nora Roberts books that I haven't read yet on my e-reader. I don't know if I'm going to read them or not. I was very disappointed. It was still a good romance once I like didn't care about what was annoying me, but the ending wrapped up really fast and I just felt I was just disappointed. Just disappointed. Well, that's all for my May reading wrap-up. I don't think I'm going to read quite as many books in June, but I do plan on having time to film and edit and post more videos because I'll be home and I'll have a babysitter, which will be great. Tell me what you read in the month of May in the comments. I would love to talk to you about it. If you read any of these books and had a different opinion than me, I would love to talk about that as well. If you haven't already, please click on the subscribe button and that little bell to let you know when I post new videos, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!